and welcome to the international programme. If you've ever strolled along the Aurach, you've probably never considered it as a good source of electricity. But that's exactly what's happening not very far from here. For this month's report, Gillian's been finding out how an old mill has changed with the times.
One of the oldest and largest sources of renewable energy is hydroelectricity. But when you think of hydroelectricity, you think of massive projects generating megawatts of energy. We've heard of the Three Gorges Dam in China, the largest in the world, generating 22,500 megawatts per year. At the other end of the scale, there are many small operators that generate electricity mainly for their own consumption. Herzogenaurach too is home to a couple of small-scale operators, although many residents of our town may not be aware of that. As the river Aurach winds its way through town, its ability to support life is in full view. Not so visible is its potential to generate hydroelectricity. But not far from the center of the old town, right along the outer walls that once surrounded the town, is Stadtmühle, a mill that has stood there for about 1,000 years. An interesting fact about the mill, it was built outside the walls surrounding the town center. When the outer wall was built around the town in the second half of the 15th century, the mill was incorporated into the town, but the water wheels were still outside the town wall. We met up with Christian Ott, who owns and operates the mill today, to learn more about Stadtmühle.
The oldest mention was in 1348, and there was probably a medium shaft water wheel. That means that the hydropower the water comes from the middle of the wheel, and then it gets in rotation. And in 1519, there was a fulling mill for cloth makers, very popular in Herzogenaurach. And after that, in 1801, so on, there is a talk of 3 grinds per day, milk grinding wheat.
Yeah.
And in 1896, the mill burned down completely. And in 1926, there's a talk of building up a turbine, which is now also a turbine, not a water wheel. And so it was a fulling mill, and then a sawmill, and then a grain mill, and now I harvest electricity.
Since when has your family owned Stadtmühle?
Since 1930, my grandpa's dad, Johann Könner, bought a mill and milk grinding wheat.
And why did he decide to do that? Did he have experience?
No, they were farmers in Burgstadt, and I think they trained on the job only for 5 years, and then he died and his wife took the date.
When did you switch from milling grain to generating electricity?
The electricity was already here from up to 1958. And in 1958, they bought a generator and produced additional hydro energy. And it was only used for the light and the fridge. My grandpa was the last miller, and in 1972 he died. And since the date, we didn't work with grain. And in 2001, we decided to make a cut. And from this date, we produce hydroelectric power for Herzogenaurach.
And whose idea was this to switch only to generating electricity?
Since the late 90s, my father and I had been members for the agenda group for energy here in Herzogenaurach. And in the agenda group was a man named Dieter Grimm. And Dieter Grimm had experience in this. And he helped us to switch and to install all the things you will see. And from this date, we produce electricity.
And was it a complicated process to install all these machines?
Yes, we had a lot of manpower and a little bit of money, around 30,000 euro, so on, for a new generator, new wheels, and a lot of other little things.
And how much time did it take?
To switch, it was around 1 or 2 years.
What do you do with the electricity that you generate? And how much electricity do you generate in a year?
Depends on the water we have. And around 50,000 kilowatts is possible at all time. And around up to 40 or 50,000 in a year it's possible. And I sell it to Herzogenaurach. So around 15,000 to 20,000 we produce for the others. The rest we take for us. So it's around for 3, 4, 5 households, I think.
And do you have to ask for it specifically, or it's included in the normal tariff?
So the small and the normal tariff, and then there's a special natural energy tariff. It's named E to the power of 3. Everybody in Herzogenaurach can buy it, and a little piece of the money you pay switches out, and other natural energy projects will be financed.
Are there seasonal variations in the amount of electricity generated? And what does that depend on?
We will start in autumn. Autumn, we have the problem with the leaves, and I have to take it out, that the water can run through the turbine. And in winter, sometimes with ice, I have problems. And the best months are from February, March, up to April, May. That's the best month. No leaves, no ice, and a lot of water. And in summer times, it stands still. I have to stop it for 3 or 4 weeks. Also around July and the beginning of August or so.
Why is that?
There's less water to run the mill. I need around 60 liters per second. And if it's less, it doesn't run and produce energy. So then I will clean it up and repair things. Okay. If there's a lot of water, we have a high water level and something damaged, I have to repair, for example. Or the turbine house, or the windows. The main work is to clean the rake and the turbine.
How often do you have to clean the turbine?
The turbine, 3 or 4 times a year, it's enough.
So how many people work over here?
I'm a one-man show, only I.
That sounds like a lot.
Yes, it's a lot of work the whole year.
And you're also a teacher at the Berufsschule in Neustadt. Do you teach something that is related to what you do here?
A little bit. I teach the carpenters and the bricklayers. And so I can use some information here for my own work. And I also teach politics. And the politics, some topics as sustainable, natural energy, environmental protection, and so on. And so I use it sometimes.
What are the challenges that you face in this business?
Yes, the challenges, I earn 7 cents per kilowatt. Also jetzt at the price I get from the Herzogenaurach. And so around you have 100 or 150 euros per month. And you have to pay the insurance. You have to work. You have to buy some things you need for the turbine, and that's very expensive.
Why do you do it then?
Why? I earned it from my daddy, and my daddy did, and so I also do. I also profit because I have electricity all the day and also for the year, and it's tradition. We are one of 4,000 hydroelectric power stations in Bavaria.
That's a lot of power stations. But when you think about it, it's not surprising at all. As Christian said, it's tradition. For centuries, rivers were a vital lifeline to the people who built settlements around them, and water wheels played a very important role in harnessing the power of the rivers. Farmers used water wheels to scoop water out of the rivers and irrigate their crops, while brewers, millers, and others used water wheels with paddles to generate the power needed to run their machines. Turbines replaced water wheels in the early 20th century, streamlining the generation of power and acting as a catalyst for the electrification of Bavaria. At its peak in 1926, there were nearly 12,000 hydroelectric power stations, mostly small ones, but these numbers started to decline from the 1960s onwards. Times were tough for millers and other traditional professions as the demand for their services slowly evaporated. Stadtmüller stopped milling grain in the 1970s, but gradually adapted to changing times. Others, like the sawmill, no longer generate hydroelectricity and have switched to the regular power grid to take advantage of newer and cheaper energy sources such as oil and nuclear power. But many were not so lucky and had to shut shop. As a result of these closures, the total number of plants fell, but the capacity went up nearly 5 times as larger dedicated hydroelectric power plants were built. But how exactly is hydroelectricity generated? At its core, it's not very complicated, as Christian explains.
I take advantage to the difference in altitude. And so I use altitude energy from the water. And the altitude is around 2 meters. The water runs down under in the turbine here on the ground. And then the turbine turns the wheel here on the top. It runs every time with 100 rounds per minute. And then the wheel is connected with a generator. The difference is 1 to 7.5. And so the generator turns with 750 turns per minute. And it's connected with a Herzogenaurach. And now it produces energy, natural energy. It produces now around 3 or 4 kilowatt.
Stadtmüller has been producing energy for a long time. The big difference is that now most of the energy generated is fed into the grid. For centuries, old mills like Stadtmüller and the one here in Niederndorf have adapted to the changing needs and conditions. Now, once again, change is in the air. In 2021, the European Union upgraded the targets it had set to cut its greenhouse gas emissions as compared to the 1990 levels. The new targets are very ambitious, with an interim target of 55% by 2030 and the end goal of net zero emissions by 2050. A switch to less carbon-intensive fuels has to be part of the solution. And that's where hydroelectricity comes in. Large hydroelectric power plants that rely on dams and water stored in reservoirs have fallen out of favor because of their negative social impact, as well as the damage that they do to the ecosystem. But small and medium-sized ones, or run-of-the-river hydroelectric power plants as they are known, harness energy from the available flow of the river and do not disturb the fish, birds, and other wildlife. They are environmentally friendly and are increasingly becoming reliable partners to help meet our need for renewable energy. As more consumers opt for locally generated clean energy, utility companies have expanded their mix of energy options. Herzogenaurach's E3 tariff includes solar, biomethane, as well as hydroelectricity from the river Aurach. Clean and local. Just what the doctor ordered for our overheating planet.
Thank you for watching. We look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.